Good evening. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at XB's Property Expert Podcast live at 5. If you're tuning into the podcast, thank you for tuning in. And if you can see us visually on YouTube, thank you also for tuning in. If you don't know who we are, Ben and I run multiple 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses, all in property and construction industry. And on these lives, we share the highs and lows, some tips and tricks, and hopefully some key nuggets to save you time and money in your own business. For those listening, it's the 2nd of August, and we,
it's definitely not the 2nd of August. So I'm just changing it now.
Apologies, it's 9th of August. We forgot to adjust it from last week, but as always, we have a number of things to share with you, which hopefully pushes you on your way. And I will say, we do not have a question for the end of the episode. So if you're there thinking, what is the biggest pain point or struggle in my business, please do put it in the comment section and we will come around to answering it live to hopefully help you push your business forward. So back onto the agenda, we'll be talking about site branding poll. This one is for Marlow. We've already done a front design poll on Marlow, but this is actually the branding of the site. So stay tuned to pick out of, I think we've got 4 or 5 options there. Ben and I and my brother also attended Property Entrepreneur, run by Dan Hill in Birmingham on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday this week. Time out of the business to work on the business, and we'll be sharing about what we learned and what our key shares are with you. We'll be talking about the first hire in any business and who that should be. So if you're one-man band or two-man band of directors, who you should be looking at hiring. And spoiler alert, it's not someone technical or professional in your team. What is counsel? I'll leave that until we get to it. We'll be talking about the Old Maltings and the planning update. For those of you that are familiar with the site, we've had to do various different phases of planning, and we love doing this on our sites to add true value and play the game of chess with the council to really make huge profit margins in our schemes. We'll be talking about Ben being on TV. I think he's very well suited for it and what Ben has been up to with the Sky TV guys. St Andrew's Court planning update, similar to the Old Maltings, but I don't actually know what this is. I can kind of guess what it is, but I'm excited to hear what else we're doing on St Andrew's Court since we've had several planning applications approved. We'll be talking about wealth dynamics, who you are as a person and what you naturally are good at and drawn to as a personality test and why that might be important to know. We're going to be sharing what Ben and I scored on the personality test too. And then finally, as always, Q&A. There's a huge opportunity for someone out there to ask us a question. Any question gets answered. So do bring a question with us later today.
Nice. Welcome, everyone. Hello. And I'll start off by saying, if you're listening on the podcast, this next section isn't great for you. So do make sure that you are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, that you're tuning in some of the live video recordings, because there are always visual things that we talk about. We're in a very visual business with property. So, there are certain things like this that are more suited to those platforms. So at Site Branding, we are going through the start of the sales process with this project. It's an office and dance studio conversion to 8 flats. And if you've been listening in over some previous episodes, you would have understood the process that we've gone through to get to that point with the various planning applications. But we are fully on site now and due for completion in November time this year. So they're really starting to take shape. So we're now putting our hand to the sales and marketing process and what we're going to be doing for the site branding. So this is a poll that we're looking for audience participation on. So if you've got some opinions, do drop them down below. We've brought on a graphic designer to help brand this site and help from an interiors and a specification and a site look and feel perspective. And they've given us some draft designs, which I'm going to be going through now. So for those that are looking on screen, we've got option A, which is the green garden, very floral, very green kind of vibes going on with this one. We've got timeless navy, which is very timeless classic, I guess, very traditional, no real kind of logo mark as such. It's all about kind of the type form and the colors and patterns, etc. Arches in sage is option C, so more of a lighter green color, utilizing. So just actually before I get into this, it's worth saying that the site is called Archway Court. It's smack bang in the middle of Marlow in Buckinghamshire. and to get to the mews part of the development, you have to go under this undercroft, which is that kind of archway. It's the name that we took the site on with, and we're going to be keeping it because I do actually think it's really well suited to the site. So this Arches in Sage is more about that kind of curved logo form, very traditional type form on the font again, and the sort of nice like light green type color. Burgundy letterpress, so utilizing individual letters, that burgundy type color with this big key in the background, and more of a autumnal type feel to it. And then you've got blue keys, which is more of a lighter blue than the navy blue you saw earlier, using this kind of key graphic, old school sort of skeleton key type figure as the main sort of pattern running through it. So they have it. Do let us know. Option A, option B, option C, option D, or option E. Let us know what your choices are down in the comments below. And we will be pulling those together and letting you know in the next couple of weeks which one we've moved forward with. Cool. On to point number 2. Are you the next property entrepreneur? If you don't follow Dan Hill's podcast, the Blueprint podcast, and Josh Keegan's Ultimate FD podcast, you are missing out. It's something that we tune into regularly. I don't think I've missed an episode of the Ultimate FD podcast since its inception about 18 months ago. Loads of real good nuggets in there from a tax, from a bookkeeping, from an accounting perspective. And the Property Entrepreneur is kind of an extension of all of the things that they talk about on those podcasts. It's been running for 10 years. It's been voted by all of the delegates kind of a world-class program. And you'd think it was, you'd go into this thinking that they're going to be teaching you about rent to rent and deal sourcing and all the things under, in property that you can get from online courses and progressive property and property investor network and all that sort of stuff. And it's not at all like that. What they teach you on Property Entrepreneur is very much about how to run a business and a successful business. And their tagline is wealth, health, and life by design. So, designing the life that you want to live. And they go through various seasons, the autumn, the spring, the winters, the summer, and each part of the year is about doing something different in your business to step change into the next level. So yeah, Jack and I went to this with Rob, 3-day blueprint event in the Belfry. So we managed to get a round of golf in, which is amazing. And we just wanted to share some of the key things that we took away from it. And I've got one or two things that were I took away from the busy day-to-day of the general sort of business life. You're running around at 100 miles an hour. Your feet are kind of going like Freddie Flintstone in the car. And this was a good opportunity to take a step back, look holistically at what you're doing in your life and in your businesses, and having a think about kind of what it does for you. So one of the things that I took away for those listening is something they call Sunday sanity. So on a Sunday afternoon, morning, whatever floats your boat, taking 20 minutes to plan the rest of your week, and actually means that you then get a really good jump start on the week ahead. And I nip into this and I dive out of it, and I've never been consistent with it. So it's something that I'm going to be doing going forward, to make sure that I'm eating those frogs first thing Monday morning, doing the most important things within the business that move you to the next level. And yeah, that was one of the first things I took away. Jack, do you want to nip in one of your learnings?
Yeah, I've got 28 action points in my book from the 3 days. And as Ben mentioned, generally speaking, it's very business focused. We're part of the Developers Club, and that is where you understand the line items on your spreadsheet and what other people are doing in development. But the Property Entrepreneur is where you understand the ins and outs of business nous and skills. So some things that I learned, and some of them are just reaffirming, really. We'll come on to one major one later, which is about the wealth dynamics profiles. But a thing that I'm going to start doing is time tracking with either Toggle or Clockify. All the guys there do it because they want to understand their hourly worth, where they should be spending their time, where they should be cutting out time, where they should be building job descriptions on tasks that they didn't realize form such a large part of their day-to-day activities, as it were. Another one that I really loved is company rules. We talked in the session about your business should have rules within your business. So that is minimum sort of gross profit target, minimum net profit target, minimum value of deal or whatever it may be. And I'd love to get that printed in our office so that the team can sort of immerse themselves in our rules, and we're not battling with things and clients and deals and projects and things that aren't really part of the core focus of the business. What else did we learn?
I one of the things I'm taking away is to kind of involve my wife and sort of family in the sort of 5-year trajectory of where we want to be. You hear about vision boards and things like that, and that's, you know, sometimes can sound quite woo woo, and I'm really not that woo woo, to be honest. But having some clear direction and goals to set as a family, you know, Jack and I have done this as a business, but we've never properly sat down and said, look, in 5 years' time, where do you want to be? You know, what do you want to be doing? You know, my wife wants a double-fronted house and to travel a lot, and you know, these are sorts of things that aren't going to get done unless we actually write it down and you know, try and tackle it together. So yeah, doing some form of vision board is something I'm going to be taking away as well.
Yeah, cool. Another thing that they sort of banged on home was like a product life cycle. It really did make me think that, you know, it was XP Surveys, for an example, is such a solid business. It doesn't have a life cycle. It's not a trend. It's not, you know, it's not like a big boom and then if everyone jumps in, then it's going to be really competitive. It's quite an uncompetitive field. And you may find that for other types of surveying. So that's another thing to think about, especially if you're a service-based business. You know, when we started our HMO portfolio, there were people that were out there doing HMOs, but now it seems every man and their dog has got 1 or 2 or 10. It's kind of like a pair of Nike trainers. Like everyone that I meet at a property event's got at least a pair. So it's all about that sort of boom and what's next and what's coming up, and you know, talks of social housing being one of the next booms. And then one last point for me is the difference between a task being urgent and important. And you should never really blend an employee that has both. So for an example, and this is why I actually believe solicitors are always like not performing, because all of their work is important and technically most of their work is urgent. So you just never end up getting anything done. You're jumping and flitting between two things. So the one key thing that we took away from that is make sure that the people that have the important roles in the business are not necessarily always juggling all the urgent stuff as well, because it may impact the important movement behind the scenes in the business.
Yeah, nice, good. I mean, I'm not going to go too much more into this. There's a few, hopefully a few things there that you can take away and implement in your lives and your businesses. You know, maybe we'll do a bit more on kind of some deeper, meaningful stuff that has come from it that that will help people. But for now, we'll move on. We do have a couple of questions, so thank you very much, Jamie Smith and Warwick Group London, for some questions via Instagram. We've got some questions to the that we'll add to the end now. We've got top 3 online resources to fold into sourcing HMOs for your portfolio, and then the best way to structure an option agreement on land. So we'll add those to the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Topic number 3, wanted to cover the first hire in any business, and we've done this in every single business that we've run. And the first hire that we have brought on board is some form of administration assistant. When I started Aura, the first person I got on board was a part-time sort of office manager, stroke admin assistant. That was crucial and fundamental to allowing me to do what I wanted to do, which was, you know, when I set up Aura in May 2017, in October 2017, I actually traveled the world for 5 months. So I had to have somebody on the ground helping out with all the administration. I then employed a Part 2 architect to do some of the work, but most of the administration was then taken by the office manager, and it allowed me to really focus whilst I was on the other side of the world about the strategy of the business, where I wanted it to go, what the marketing channels were, how I was going to get that content out there, how I was going to grow the business without getting bogged down by the nitty-gritty day-to-day. And when we started XP Surveys, again, first person we hired was a business assistant. And that's what we would recommend in every single business that you start. You need to be taking away the stuff that is low value work that somebody else on a lower hourly rate can do, and allow you the time to go out and work on the key priorities for the business, the income generating tasks, IGTs. There's various acronyms you can use for it, but fundamentally free up your time to go away and do all of the valuable work, make the sales, grow the business, and get money through the door.
Yeah, I think that sort of follows on from understanding your own hourly rate. Like, don't cut corners by saving costs for paying for someone if you're reallocating your own time in an area that could be really utilized. There's two really successful business owners that I know. One of them's actually one of our investors, and one of them's my dad. And I know that both of them, the first hire that they made before they did any business, I'm talking day one, not year one. Day one is hired someone to do the admin. My dad did it because he can't read or write. So, when you're forced to bring in that admin, I believe that's one of the reasons that they're so successful, because they're forced to go out and do the real monetizing, the new business, the generating business, the relationship management, the bigger picture stuff, rather than just pushing paper around.
Yeah, I think the best saying I can sort of say for this is that you can't afford not to have this person, in your business from early days, because you aren't going to grow and do all the things that we've just talked about. So yeah, those that are listening that are wanting to start a business, or just started a business, or are struggling to find the time to do everything, which is, so many people over the last week at the Property Entrepreneur, a lot of the issues they were having was time, and they didn't have this admin help. They were doing everything within the business, then bookkeeping, sending out invoices. That is all stuff that needs to go outsourced, to an admin assistant of some kind, whether that be in-house or external. Cool. Hope that's valuable. If you want to sort of talk about more things like, business growth and how to get your business to 7-8 figure revenues, then do join our XP boardroom if you're interested in working with award-winning property developers like ourselves and the delegates that we bring on board. We'd love to have you involved. Type boardroom down below, or send us an email or direct message, and we'll send you full details. And we're all about kind of giving everyone guidance, holding people accountable to what they say they're going to do, and just driving their businesses forward whilst learning from the successes and failures that we've had over the last 6-7 years doing it. Cool. Topic number 4, what is counsel? And that's COUNSEL, as in sort of legal counsel, which if you do development for long enough, I'm sure you will have to utilize the support of this type of specialism, whether that be through the planning process, which we have recently done. And if you skip back a couple of episodes where we talk about the certificate of lawful existing use applications that we've just made on a project, we got legal counsel support on that to get the opinion of basically high court opinion on the existing use class of our property, and whether or not the information that we were providing to the planning officer was robust enough to get the appropriate approvals over the line. So we're also looking at this in our project in St Andrew's Court in Thame, where there are some potential legal disputes and issues with car parking and access rights surrounding that. So we have had to seek legal counsel opinion on some very nuanced and sort of interesting clauses within land titles and leases to understand how strong an argument we have as the developer to push back on certain rights that certain people think they have over land that we think we own. And that's the crux of what legal counsel is. It's a view from a very experienced sort of barrister level type solicitor that can guide you and give you the confidence around the issues that you're talking about in terms of how it would stand up if it did have to get to court level. So, when you go in, when you are a developer, you need to go in prepared to understand actually what is the fallback position, not just he said, she said, or this is what I think this says. you need to actually have legal support to back up those views in counsel opinion format. So whether that be a written statement or some form of video call, for example, like conference call, where they give you their feedback and you can ask questions, and then they write up a little summary afterwards. That's typically what we're looking to do on this project in Tame. And to give some insight, we had quotes from £10,000 plus down to sort of £3,000 to £4,000 plus for this support. And this may only be a half-hour call, and that's what you're spending the money, the big bucks on. But fundamentally, it can make or break deals for you. If you know where you stand legally and you have the confidence behind you, knowing that you are going to have a better position in court. If you're negotiating for something worth £100,000 and it costs you £4,000 to give you the confidence to say, no, I'm not paying this £100,000 because legally, if you want to take us to court and fight us on this, we're confident that we're going to win. And that's what legal counsel can give you.
The only other thing I was going to say is when you're actually speaking to, let's say you're getting advice because the tenant's not paying rent or a neighbour's being an issue, sometimes you don't actually have to get the legal advice, and you could just say to them, I've sought legal advice, and it just sort of shows that you're serious about that activity before you may need to get an £8,000 quote and pay for that. Because realistically, if you know that you've got a good leg to stand on, but even before you go to legal counsel, we often just share that with the other side.
Yeah, nice. Cool. If you've got any questions about that down below, let us know. That's just our experience of it and the processes that we've gone through. And hopefully it helps you. If you've never heard of that, know that it's there to help you on projects going forward. Cool. The Old Maltings. If you've been tuning into this, this right-hand side image is a CGI of where we hope the property ends up in terms of applications that we get approved and external works that we add and new builds that we get in the car park, for example. So this sort of big lump of building on this right-hand side is what we've recently applied for planning for. So it's 2 3-bed townhouses and an external bin store that we're trying to build on the end of the property, end of the car park. And we had some good news last week. I'm not going to count my chickens, but fundamentally the email said from the planning officer, the changes that we have made, he is in support of from a design and a principle of development perspective. The only thing we need to tick off is an archaeological dig to prove that there's no Roman coins or dead people or whatever like in the area that we want to build. So yeah, good news. We're going to sort of move forward at risk with our kind of detailed design and really start pressing the button on moving that stuff forward, even though we don't have the planning approval in hand. And sometimes, time is money. And we've been discussing this a lot recently, whereby, if we wait for the actual planning application to come through, you've probably wasted the best part of 6 weeks, and holding 6 weeks of debt on the other side of, a finished development will cost you way more than pulling the trigger on an architect to move forward with the detailed design. So sometimes it's well worth going forward at risk to making sure that you're not holding up the timeline of the development. So that's the rear of the site. This is the courtyard where, as well as those 2 new build houses, we have applied to get these balconies at 1st and 2nd floor level, these gardens with the parking inside with the gates and the landscaping. So all of that is wrapped up in that rear courtyard application, and fingers crossed that does come through in the next month. And then a couple of months ago, a month ago, we submitted a planning application to extend the front of the site. So this top image is what it looks like at the moment. It's got this horrible steel and glass structure to the front on the main busy road. And what we want to do is replace that frontage, reinstate a brick facade with a bit of a nod to the industrial heritage and brewery heritage of the site, and change the frontage. Change the frontage on the elevation. And unfortunately, we had another email this week from the planning officer to say that he has concerns over the 2nd floor extension. So we'll see how that goes. It's very early days. They haven't gone out to consultation. We've had some feedback from air quality saying that they've got no objections. from the HMO officer to say that we would have to just get licensing in place, which again is fine. So what we're doing with this is taking a 1-bed flat split level to a 5-bedroom HMO by doing this. Not only is it increasing the curb appeal, we think, of the site, but it's also gaining an extra 4 bedrooms, lettable bedrooms. Just as a quick rule of thumb, we'll probably get 750 quid for those extra 4 bedrooms a month. That's £3,000 times 12, £36,000 worth of rent roll additional. And if we're looking at even a 7.5% yield on kind of that rent roll, that's an extra almost £500,000 worth of value that we can add to this asset by making these changes. So well worth doing. We'll have to see how that planning process plays out. So far, I'm not too optimistic given the one-liner in the email that we received this week, but we always expected a bit of a fight. It's it is a bit main busy road. It's a real change to how that facade looks, and hopefully we can find a happy medium that's acceptable for the planning officer and acceptable to us. Cool. Number 6, if you haven't seen our posts across Aura and XP Property over the last sort of couple of months, I've been recording for Sky TV on their property question time, which has been really good fun. Some really probing questions that hopefully I've fielded, relatively well. The first one was launched 4 weeks ago. There's about 1,000 views on their YouTube channel with that. So all great marketing for us. Lots of learning, good opportunity to kind of expand into different networks, and different people will be viewing this than viewing our Instagram and these live videos, for example. So yeah, tapping into a different marketplace, and hopefully people are enjoying the content and the conversations and the questions that are coming through. So do tune into that if you're on Sky. I think it's channel 186 on Sky TV. I think it's every Tuesday night at about 8 or 9 o'clock. These episodes go live. I've had some interesting conversations with John Howard, so far with Vincent Wong, and I recorded 2 extra episodes yesterday. So look out for those. If you're getting value from these podcasts and the live broadcast, do rate us on Spotify and leave a review on Apple podcasts, whether you listen on Castbox or Amazon Music. Thank you. And if you could share this with just one person that you think would get value from it. We're just looking to give back to business owners that are always struggling. We've been through the struggle. We are in the struggle. So hopefully there's 1 or 2 things every week that you can learn from these conversations that you can implement in your business. You can grow faster. You can learn from our mistakes, and get you to where you want to be in life. So yeah, we'd love a rate. We'd love a review, and we'd love you to just share it with one person. Cool. This is a bit of a me show this week, isn't it? Because we weren't sure whether Jack was gonna turn out, because he might be flying off to Dublin very soon. So I'll let you answer all the questions at the end.
I wasn't quite sure there.
So St Andrew's Court planning update as well. Very quickly, we've got making really good progress on the sales, and you can see the image in front of you is the wider existing office which we're converting. Most of these inset terraces have been formed. I saw a photo yesterday of the steelwork being delivered for these first floor balconies, and we're making really good progress on the first 9, which is the phase 1. We've then got to fit out one of the office tenants' offices, move the tenant from this side of the building over to this side of the building, and then we can start works on the recently approved Class MA permitted development application that we've got to convert this side of the building into 11 flats. So that's great. This whole building will become 20 flats and 4,500 square feet of commercial space, which we are keeping. Good rent roll, mixed use asset. The rent from the commercial tenants have been paying our finance costs for the last 9 months since we've owned the site, and it's been a great kind of phased deal that just kind of is the gift that keeps on giving. So the next gift, or we hope will be in the next gift, is this side of the slides, which is an application that went in last week for 2 3-bed houses as like a semi-detached pair in the car park of the site. So bit of dead space, a little bit of shuffling around of kind of car parking spaces, but fundamentally we think it sits nicely in the scheme. It's on the edge of a conservation area, so we've had to be very careful around the design and how this has been approached. one thing that actually really pissed me off as I was making the application last week, I submitted 24, made 24 submissions with this application. The amount of assessments that we've had to do is outrageous. And actually maybe next week I'll go through them all, because it was, I actually don't know how much we spent, and I'll add that up as well. The number of submissions that we had to make, how much those reports cost us for 2 units. It's getting ridiculous the way that the planning application process is now. There's energy statements that are being submitted that shouldn't really be any real part of the planning process. That's building regulations, that's detailed design, that's fundamentally what people submit as a planning strategy or a planning statement at planning stage barely ever gets through to the detailed design stage and is actually what's built. So it's pointless anyway. People just redesign it once they find out how much things cost and how much they get into the detailed design, and it's just waste of time and a waste of money for most people. So I do think that needs to be looked at by the government, really, about all these new applications and how many assessments and reports are needed. It just takes more time for the assessors to review them, for the officers, and fundamentally I just feel like it's a waste of time and money for everyone. But that's where we're at with the planning. One application gone in for 2 new houses at the early stage. It's been validated, it's been assigned to a planning officer, and we'll keep you updated over the next couple of weeks as that progresses and feedback comes back through the planning officer. Any questions about those sites? Yeah, drop them in the comments below. Happy to answer them.
I'm happy to take the wealth dynamics.
Yeah.
This was actually the first thing my first mentor got me to do, and read the book Your Life, Your Legacy by Roger Hamilton, the well-known billionaire that Ben and I have had the pleasure to meet. But he came up with this process, really, and it's called Your Wealth Dynamics. And what it means is every different person has a different type of personality and offers different things or does things differently to everyone else. So to give you an example, and what you can actually see there is my score and Ben's score, which is actually quite similar. But there's 4 different categories of a person. There's a dynamo, which tends to be a creative, big sky thinking person. Apparently almost unemployable is a common phrase. But it's the business owners and the visionaries of the world, and then you have different profiles within that dynamo role. You then have a blaze, who is someone that's very good at sales, very supportive in groups, like personal trainers, salespeople, but that administration certainly lacks. Then at the bottom you have yellow, which is tempo. They're very methodical people that once you give them a roadmap, they can't visualize the roadmap, but they can certainly deliver on the roadmap. And that is where a dynamo, for an example, might bring in a tempo to deliver their thoughts. And a dynamo might be like, I want to do this, and then a minute later I want to do this, and then a minute later I want to do this, and constantly flitting around, whereas a tempo will consistently keep the tempo, pun intended. And then last but not least is the steel, which is on the left-hand side, which is normally a blue color, and they're people that are very black and white, methodical, normally data-driven or spreadsheet-driven, and they're the sort of people that don't care about feelings or team collaboration. They're more just the details of detail, and they just get through. So you might see coders that are steels or engineers that are steels. And the whole purpose of this test is so that you bring people in your team that offer different skill sets. So for an example, let's say you had 4 people in a company and all 4 were dynamos. Nothing would ever get done or delivered, and the plan would keep changing over and over again. If you had 4 blazes, you would have over excessiveness of sales and not the team to deliver it. And you might not even have the ability to deliver once you've got all those sales in. If you had all tempos, you would have great deliverability, but lack of sales and lack of vision. You might end up doing things just for the sake of doing them. And then steels is very numbers driven. So it's very bad for partnerships, relationships, and joint ventureships as well. But if you had 1 from all 4, you could almost guarantee that would be a much more successful company than any other ratio that you could potentially pull together. The reason we're sharing this is this was a massive part of the Property Entrepreneur, and Ben and I did it, I think, 8 years ago. As you can see on the right-hand side there, you can see our sort of blue line score, and Ben's quite an all-rounder. I was a little bit more focused around the sort of creator top sort of dynamo, but then also a little bit of tempo as well, which is my sort of deal-making skills, I think. that sort of feed into that. And what is really important behind this, and it's similar to, as someone's just put a question in their DISC profile, is once you understand things, you can then be a lot more successful in the business, in allocating tasks, in training people in tasks, in sending the right people to events. A Blaze loves going to an event and will speak to everyone. A Steel or a Tempo might not be that social. So it's getting the best out of each player. So it's essentially building, as an analogy, it's like building a football team with the right people in the right position. So your forward isn't at the back and your goalkeeper's not in the middle of the field. It's analysing people's best attributes and putting them in the right places to ensure your business hugely benefits from that. And coincidentally, Ben and I did this, and we're very similar. But I think the principle of what our roles are similar is we're very led down the route of the innovator, the visionary, the sort of big picture thinking. But we're also quite mechanical and understand the numbers. Therefore, we're good at getting the vision in place and then bringing a team around us. And in actual fact, I did on a graph this week on where our team are, and a lot of our team are Steels and Tempos. I don't actually believe we hire one Dynamo. We haven't got many Blazes. We did have a Blaze, but he moved on. But I think most of our team are Steels and Tempos, which is delivery, pure delivery. We come up with the ideas. They tell us to not come up with any more, and we sort of knuckle down and help the Tempos and the Steels deliver out.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, we do use DISC profiling. Thank you very much for that comment. I do it in Aura. Actually, all of my team in Aura have done DISC profiling. I did feel like that was maybe more relevant than the wealth dynamics. I think a lot of times we've used wealth dynamics more in like a property industry perspective. And I guess it was the discus and the DISC profiling is way more common, I would say. Like in big corporates, you're more likely to do that DISC profiling than you are this wealth dynamics kind of personality test. But they all do very similar things. They're all going to come out with, this is the type of person you are. Where I'd say the wealth dynamics is easier to see how different personality types may work within your business. The DISC profiling that I've seen is very, I don't know, it's very obviously person centric, but it doesn't necessarily give you really clearly insight into who would work well together. It just says, this is this person, this is what they're like maybe in the office, this is like what they're like out of the office. And it is different. I mean, I've got DISC profile reports that are like 50 odd pages long, to be honest, and sometimes it's way too much information to handle. Whereas this, I do think with the wealth dynamics, breaks it down much more simplistically. But I mean, all types of personality tests like this are a great way of understanding what you are, what you need in your business, and what type of team you need to pull together to get the most efficient all-round kind of business players. So yeah, I think it's well worth doing. I think it's about 100 quid, is it? $100, Jack? Can't remember how much.
Yeah, $100. I think we've got a discount code if anyone does want one. Not sure how far that will go, but I think it's complete. Even just so to give you an example, my wife's like 100% Blaze. There's no two ways about it. She is not Dynamo, Steel or Tempo in any capacity whatsoever. And it kind of gives me sanity that she's just shit at admin, but she is amazing at boosting a team, getting the best out of people, getting sales over the line. And that's just her. And I think it allows you to sort of share areas that you're not so strong in, and just to real double down on the areas you are really strong in, because that is a one. You put a salesperson against a steel in a sales position, and they will 1000x like their performance, which is like super important to acknowledge in a business.
Yeah, definitely love it. Cool. We do have quite a few questions actually that have been rattling in, so I'm going to move on to those now. And actually, we don't always post on LinkedIn, on Instagram. And it's normally when we either pre-record something or I just forget a lot of the time. So thank you very much for those that are tuning in on Instagram. To get 3 questions out of that and see the sort of number of people that have tuned in and out is amazing. So I'm going to stick up the questions on the screen. And we'll start with this one. Jamie Smith, thank you very much, said, top 3 online resources to fold into sourcing HMOs for your portfolio. That's one for you, Jack, really. You're the one that sources these things. What are your top 3 resources that you use? I mean, property data has got to be one, right?
Yeah, so property data is really good for analytics and data. So I'll start off with for sourcing. I would highly recommend Property Filter, which is actually run by a guy called Gilliam, who we were actually saw on Wednesday, I think, this week. So search out Property Filter. If you would like an introduction, let me know. It basically pulls information from Rightmove and Zoopla and sort of cleverly pulls an algorithm of letting you know which properties might be better for certain things, whether it's a purchase, lease option, flip, HMO, etc. That's for finding the actual deal. There is also another by our good friends called the HMO Designers, and they've built something called a HMO Checker. They are architects, so they have built a platform which has got an algorithm which pulls information predominantly around planning, Article 4, location analysis, specifically around for HMOs. So I think if you have those 2 tools, you should be getting a good start, or alternatively, doing better than your competition. And then the last thing I would say is you've got to understand what areas you want to be targeting. So we in Central Suites, we do something called location analysis, which is really straightforward. It's location, how far it is from the office, and then various different columns of data that we compare different areas. And how we pull that information is with spareroom.com and property data. And I'm talking about potential growth, existing growth, room rates, supply and demand, which you work out on Spareroom, what other things, pound per square foot in, and things like that, which will hugely help you pick a location. So do your own work on property data and Spareroom for location. Use HMO Checker for planning and potential areas that you're operating in, and Property Filter. If you want an intro to either of those, let us know. And then last but not least, what I would say, you will doubly speed up your time of finding HMOs if you understand a rule of thumb of how much you can pay per bed. Because what you've got to remember is a HMO is valued on its rent roll per room. So once you get into, once you've analysed a few projects and you can get into a flow to know, for an example, I know that in Oxfordshire I can pay £65,000 per bed purchase price. I don't need to get my head into a spreadsheet to sort of test and see if it will work. So I'd recommend that outside all of the technology online, you build your own processes in the house as you're analysing more and more deals.
Nice. Very good. Cool. And then the other question, next question from the Warwick Group London on Instagram. Thanks very much. Best way to structure an option agreement on land? I mean, there's quite a lot. I mean, this is a whole topic in itself, really. For as little as possible, for the best terms possible, for as long as you need.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people that purely work with options and land. They have paid a solicitor a small fortune, let's say £2,000 to £4,000, to build an extremely good template that they've then just used over and over again. I would highly recommend doing that because everyone has different ways of doing things and different techniques and different strategies and so on and so forth. We're actually much more advocates for conditional contracts with a low exchange fee. And the reason that we do that is because then you've done the conveyancing on the site. So you know that, for example, you get an option on a plot of land and you chuck in planning permission, which might cost £80,000, and then you realise there's a covenant or a restriction on that title, you've undone all that hard work. So we much prefer conditional contracts. That is hugely beneficial if planning are taking like 2 years to get a decision out the door, because an option does have a date that it will end. So recommendations for options is, if you can, agree conditional contracts and you can fund that and fund the conveyancing process. Obviously, a conditional contract can be assignable, so it's got the same flexibility as an option agreement, but you are then legally obliged to buy it if the condition, like the planning, does come through. With an option, obviously, as Ben said, try and make sure that it's watertight for you. The fee of the option is as low as possible, potentially £1. The duration is stipulated on timeframes that are out of your control. And what I mean by that is, let's see you agree a 12-month option and you have 6 months to submit the planning. What I would suggest is pin the timeframes on when you get decisions back. So for an example, let's say you agree it for 12 months once you get the planning approved, or once you have the first planning feedback from a pre-app or whatever it may be. So make sure that you open up your flexibility as a buyer as much as you can. but I'd actually highly advise just getting a good lawyer to pull it up. The lawyers that we use in Reading, shout from the trees and think options are the best thing since sliced bread. So if you want an introduction to them, we're more than happy to intro you. I can't hear you for some reason.
That's because I'm on mute, like an idiot. Yeah, I was saying, Jamie Smith says, yes, it would be great to sort introductions if that's possible. Spot on. Cool. Final question from Instagram is probably too big to jump into too much. Is assisted living worth going into? I mean, for those of you that have been tuning in and know what we've done over the last 3.5, 4 years, coming up 4 years now, which is mad. But we have built a £20 million portfolio in South London, so 120 beds. We buy the assets, we refurbish the assets, we then lease those assets to a housing provider on a full repairing lease for 10 or 25 years, depending on the size of that project. Those housing associations provide the relevant care to the tenants. They fully, tenant everything, deal with the care provision, the maintenance. It's a full repairing lease, so they have to deal with all of the insurances and the maintenance. And it's handed over as what's meant to be a very low risk, low input type investment. Which is why there's lots of pension funds and big funds looking to buy this type of stock. Now, there's too many really different terms or different business models associated with assisted living. So it's really difficult to understand 63 Mitch, kind of what type of assisted living you're really referring to. We deal with supported tenants. So effectively, we get paid as landlord the local housing allowance. And the housing association that rents the properties or leases the properties from us gets paid an enhanced level of local housing allowance, and that enhanced level is actually slightly more than the LHA rate itself. So let's say we've got a bedroom rate of £220 per week per bedroom. It might actually be £250 or £260 a week income for the housing association. Now, out of that £250, £260 per week per bed, they will have to provide the relevant support. That's 24/7 kind of oversight of the tenants, providing support with CVs, trying to get them back into work. It is really like a transitional type living product. So come out of hardship, you need somewhere to live to get your life back onto the right tracks. And the type of tenant that we support are people with mental health issues, special educational needs, ex-domestic violence victims, ex-military, trying to get back into normal civilian life. And yeah, that's the sort of overview of what we've done. Is it worth going into? Liz Trust and Home REIT and all of the issues that started 2 years ago has probably swayed our position on this, because it severely hit the value of our portfolio and made it very, very difficult for us. Whereas, we're setting out on this venture 4 years ago, it absolutely was, an amazing way to go. You've got these leases with, effectively government supported kind of positions and housing associations. We've learned a huge amount through that time. And I would say, it's not worth discounting. There's a huge demand, and with Labour now in the reins of government, they're going to be positioning and trying to support this type of housing stock as much as they possibly can. We need it. It is in massive demand. So is it worth going into? I think so. We spoke all about at the Property Entrepreneur about being on the crest of a wave. And I don't know whether I feel, to a certain degree, feel like maybe we were on the crest of the wave 4 years ago, and now I'm seeing it posted all over social media. Everyone seems to be wanting to get into the space. I wonder whether or not that's actually the wrong time to get into it, and maybe you're too late. I don't know. It depends on how things progress with Labour and what they bring out and how they see this going forward. But it's an interesting business model. It's something you really need to get your head around to jump into the nuances and the issues and difficulties with it. That's my 2 cents. Jack, you?
Yeah, I think we possibly grew a social housing assisted living portfolio in the worst time. I think if we had 2 assets that are 10 beds, we would probably feel a little bit differently and a bit more excited about maybe growing more into this space. But we hit a massive market on exposure and grew very quickly. And as you grow very quickly, problems come bigger and quicker. I think a good space to be looking. It sounds like from 63 Mitch. Obviously, we don't know your business model, what you're currently doing, whether you're doing developments, HMOs, service accommodation. I think a really good space if you are going into something new is the elderly living and elderly care. Did you know that there was more? I think I'll get this right. There was more 80-year-olds this year than 21-year-olds ever in the UK, and that is the sign of our aging population. And they have to live somewhere, and they've normally got quite a lot of money, and they normally need very, very little assistance or help in comparison to assisted living. So obviously they do normally need a lift, but there is a gap in the market for where there is assisted living for the elderly, and I think that's a really good space to be considering, given our I talk about it on the Ground Up podcast, our like population Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. I agree. I think it's something that it's a space that I would like to get into at some point. I mean, we're doing enough as it is at the moment, but I do think that care provision for the elderly and not even like really old, like the 80-year-olds like Jack was talking about, but that transition between like retirement age and before you go into a home where you need support because you physically can't walk anymore or have really acute issues. You just want to enjoy be surrounded by other people of that similar age. And I think there's a massive position for the you mentioned it earlier, Jack, the guy that left and went to work for Mitchell's, no, what they called the big
Churchill.
Yeah, like Churchill retirement homes, and the other one, McCarthy and Stones.
Yeah.
Those type of players. I do think there's huge amounts of value in those types of sectors, and it's an area that we know kind of big funds and pension funds and big institutional funding wants to go into. So I do think that's something for the future. Jimmy, could you please share which accountants or bookkeepers you're using for all your companies? Yes and no, I guess. It's actually a company from over in South Africa, over in, I think they're based in Cape Town, but it was introduced to us by Josh Keegan of the Ultimate FD, and they've redesigned all of our financial modeling and forecasting and management accounts. They're very well priced. I think you'll find somebody at a quarter of the same skill set and level at a quarter of the price over in South Africa. Drop us a DM and we can make an introduction if you're looking to jump ship. We've just moved over.
Just to specify, that is for the bookkeepers only. Yes. And then
that's for the bookkeeping and financial management. And then accountants, we have just moved over to a company called P10 Financial Services. And again, reach out to us. We can make an introduction. They are at the moment taking over from our previous accountants. So it's early days to really understand kind of how good that process will be. But so far, speaking to the team there, the reason that we've jumped ship is because we have confidence in their abilities and the information and feedback we've been getting, and the advice so far has been excellent. So once they're up to speed and we've transferred everything over to them, I'm looking forward to kind of booking in a meeting, sitting down with them face to face, and just going through all of our group of businesses, looking ahead and planning and strategizing from a tax perspective, because we've been lacking that massively. Really an understanding of, not just getting to that year end and then figuring out where you're at, but actually planning forward and making adjustments and allowances and doing some clever stuff from a tax perspective. So Jimmy, do reach out if you want some direct introductions on that front.
Thank you everyone for all the questions. We've had really good engagement on this one. Please do come next week armed with loads of questions. The questions make it obviously more relevant for you, so really appreciate those.
Yeah, amazing. We'll call it a day here. Hope you found some value from that. Do like, comment and share, because that is actually really important, and we don't say it enough, to kind of just click that like button. If you can share it across your socials or with somebody in a DM that you think would get value from it, would massively appreciate that. So until next Friday at 5 p.m, have a great weekend, and we'll speak to you then.